Emily sat alone in her dimly lit living room, her golden retriever Max barking at the dark hallway. She pressed record on her phone, curiosity mingling with irritation. When the barking stopped, she played it back, expecting nothing unusual. Instead, her blood ran cold as a deep male whisper slithered through the static, curling around her name with a deliberate hiss. She froze, heart hammering, her eyes darting to Max, who growled low and steady. "That can't be real," Emily whispered to herself, voice trembling. The air seemed to thicken, pressing against her chest as silence drowned the house. She felt watched, though the hallway remained empty, its shadows stretching like black veins across peeling wallpaper. A faint knock echoed from the back door, soft but heavy, as though knuckles dragged along wood. Max barked wildly again, his fur bristling, while Emily's shaking fingers hovered above her phone, unwilling to press play again. Emily whispered, "No, that wasn't real," though her chest tightened with dread. She pressed the phone again, forcing herself to replay the recording. The sound of Max's barking filled the room, harsh but familiar. Then, clear as if spoken into her ear, the same deep voice whispered her name, drawing it out with deliberate malice. Her body stiffened, blood rushing through her head until she thought she might faint. Max whined, ears pinned back, then bolted toward the hallway door, scratching at it like something waited beyond. Emily's throat dried, her mind desperate for logic. Maybe interference, maybe her imagination. She wanted to believe it, but her instincts screamed otherwise. The house groaned with old wood shifting, but she swore she heard the faint drag of footsteps above her. Emily stood, her knees weak, and crept toward the hallway. The wooden floor creaked, each sound magnified in the silence. Max pressed close beside her, his growl vibrating against her leg. "It's nothing," she muttered, but her voice betrayed her fear. The hallway seemed longer than it had ever been, its end lost in shadow. She reached for the light switch, fingers trembling, but the bulb flickered once before dying, plunging the space into oppressive darkness. Her breath caught in her throat. From the upstairs ceiling, a faint thump echoed, followed by another. Emily staggered back, her pulse racing. "Who's there?" she called, her words breaking into the silence. The house offered no reply, only the creak of boards shifting above. Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket, startling her. She pulled it out with shaking fingers. The screen displayed a notification. New recording saved. She hadn't touched the app again. Heart hammering, she opened it, and her breath hitched as she saw the timestamp. Just seconds ago. Max barked furiously at the stairwell, his nails scraping the floor. She tapped play with dread. Her own voice spilled out first, panicked and shaky. "Who's there?" Then, layered over it, came the deep whisper again, cruelly repeating her words, mocking her tone. Emily dropped the phone with a gasp. "No, no, no," she muttered, clutching her head as Max howled into the darkness. Emily snatched up the phone, desperate to shut it off, but the screen froze, the audio continuing despite her frantic swipes. The whisper grew louder, filling the room as if the speaker stood beside her. Max lunged toward the stairs, barking madly. The air thickened, the temperature dropping until Emily's breath fogged. A shadow flickered across the ceiling, stretching unnaturally long before vanishing into the stairwell. Emily backed away, tears stinging her eyes. "Please stop," she begged, clutching the phone to her chest. The whisper ceased abruptly, leaving a silence so heavy it rang in her ears. She glanced toward the stairs, and in the faint darkness, two glimmering eyes blinked once, then vanished. Emily barely slept, her body trembling from the night before. Every time she closed her eyes, the whisper replayed in her head, mocking her with that dreadful tone. The morning light spilled weakly through the blinds, but it offered no comfort. Max lay near the front door, restless, ears twitching as though he still heard something she could not. She tried to convince herself it was only her imagination, a glitch in the recording, but doubt gnawed at her with every heartbeat. When her phone buzzed, she flinched, nearly dropping it. A new notification appeared. Audio file saved. She hadn't touched the recorder all night. Her pulse quickened as she tapped play, and a sharp breath escaped her when the sound of breathing filled the room, low and guttural, like something hidden just beyond her sight. She leapt to her feet, pacing the room, her bare feet cold against the wooden floor. "This isn't happening," Emily whispered, though her voice cracked with desperation. Max barked suddenly, his fur bristling as he stared at the hallway again. She followed his gaze, her stomach dropping when she saw the faint outline of handprints smeared across the faded wallpaper. They hadn't been there yesterday. Her chest tightened, panic clawing at her throat. She rubbed her eyes, praying it was a trick of light, but when she opened them, the prints remained, dark, smudged, and sinking deeper into the wall as though something unseen pressed against it from the other side. Max growled fiercely, his body rigid. Emily whispered, "God help me," as the air grew colder. Emily stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the rug. Her phone buzzed again in her hand, and she hesitated before glancing at the screen. A new message blinked. "I see you." Her breath caught as she dropped the phone, the clatter echoing far too loudly. Max lunged forward, barking madly at the wall, his claws scratching at the wood floor. Emily's hands shook as she bent to pick up the phone, but the screen had already gone black. She pressed the power button, desperate for any sign it was only a glitch, but the device refused to respond. Her reflection in the black screen stared back at her, wide-eyed and pale, while the faint sound of whispering began again, not from the phone this time, but from the walls themselves, bleeding into the air around her. She bolted toward the kitchen, her breaths ragged, searching for something, anything, that could make her feel less helpless. Her trembling hands grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer, the metal gleaming under the dull light. "Stay with me, Max," she whispered, her voice breaking. The dog pressed close to her side, still growling at the shadows. The refrigerator hummed too loudly, a strange vibration that felt wrong, like a voice hiding beneath the noise. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself to move, but the overhead light flickered violently, casting fractured shadows across the linoleum floor. The whispers grew louder, circling her, weaving through the kitchen air like unseen figures closing in. Emily's grip on the knife tightened until her knuckles turned white. Emily's phone buzzed again on the counter, though its screen had been dead moments ago. Against her better judgment, she picked it up. The display glowed with static before clearing into a black screen with white text. "Look behind you." Her throat closed, her body locking in place. She couldn't breathe. Max barked, snapping at the empty air behind her, his teeth gnashing inches from her back. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at her, she turned her head. The reflection in the dark kitchen window wasn't her own. It was a tall, shadowed figure, its face obscured, standing inches behind her. Emily dropped the phone with a sharp cry, the device shattering on the floor as the lights above her blew out, drowning the room in suffocating darkness. Emily sat at her kitchen table, clutching a chipped mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. She hadn't slept, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. Max lay at her feet, restless, ears twitching at every creak. The silence pressed against her like a weight, broken only by the hum of the fridge. She startled when a knock echoed through the front door. Steady, deliberate, far too calm for this hour. Her breath caught, and she froze, staring toward the entryway. No one visited this early. She whispered, "Who would come here now?" Max growled low, rising to his feet, his gaze locked on the door. The knock came again, louder, more insistent, rattling the thin wood. Emily's hands trembled as she set down the mug and forced herself to stand, dread coiling tight in her chest. She opened the door a crack, her body tense. On the porch stood a man she didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a worn leather jacket. His piercing blue eyes fixed on hers, and his face carried the weary look of someone who hadn't slept in days. "Emily?" he asked softly, his voice gravelly, almost hesitant. She stiffened. "Who are you?" she demanded, clutching the door. The man glanced past her shoulder, as if expecting to see something lurking inside. "Name's Daniel," he said, his tone measured. "You don't know me, but I know what you've heard." Her stomach sank. His words struck like ice. Max barked, teeth flashing, as though confirming Daniel didn't belong. Emily tightened her grip on the door, torn between slamming it shut and demanding answers. Daniel raised his hands, palms open, his expression serious but not threatening. "You've been hearing things, haven't you? Voices that don't belong." Emily's breath caught, and she tried to slam the door, but his hand pressed firmly against it. "Don't shut me out. If you do, you'll regret it." Her pulse quickened as fear battled curiosity. "Why are you here? How do you know that?" she demanded, her voice sharp, though her hands trembled. Daniel glanced at Max, who barked furiously, then back at Emily. "Because it happened to me," he said, voice heavy with a truth she wasn't ready to hear. The words echoed in her chest, colder than the morning air seeping through the crack in the door. Emily hesitated, her mind screaming to keep him out, yet something in his tone struck too deep to ignore. "What do you mean it happened to you?" she asked, her voice quieter now, fear threaded with reluctant hope. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I lived in a house not far from here. Same thing. It started with whispers on recordings just like yours. It doesn't stop. It feeds on you until you can't tell what's real anymore." Emily shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. No, this can't be happening." Daniel leaned closer, his eyes shot. "You're already in it, and if you don't act fast, it won't let you go." The weight of his words pressed heavy, the hallway behind her seeming darker than before. Emily opened the door wider, though every nerve screamed against it. Daniel stepped inside cautiously, his boots creaking against the floorboards. Max barked and snapped, but Emily whispered, "It's okay," though she didn't believe it herself. Daniel scanned the living room, his gaze lingering on the hallway shadows. "It's here already," he muttered, his voice low. Emily's heart pounded as she followed his stare, the air feeling heavier with each breath. "What do you mean it's here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Daniel turned to her, his expression grave. "Because it never leaves once it chooses a house. And now, it's chosen you." His words fell like a final verdict, and Emily felt her knees weaken beneath her. Emily paced the living room, her nerves fraying with every second. Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, his eyes locked on the hallway, as though expecting something to emerge. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice trembling. He looked at her, calm but worn. "Because I know what's coming." She shook her head, clutching her arms tightly. "You don't know me, and I don't know you. For all I know, you're part of this." Max barked, circling between them, torn between guarding Emily and sensing Daniel's unease. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low. "I came because I couldn't let it take another person. Believe me or don't, but the thing in this house wants you broken." Emily's stomach twisted, fear and suspicion colliding in her chest. The phone rang suddenly, its shrill sound tearing through the silence. Emily jumped, staring at the glowing screen. It was Sarah, her best friend. Relief flooded her face, and she quickly answered. "Sarah, thank God. Something's happening, I need you." The voice on the other end was hesitant, strangely cold. "Emily, you have to listen. He's lying to you. Don't trust him." Emily's blood ran cold, her eyes darting to Daniel, who sat motionless. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Sarah's voice cracked, urgent. "He's not who he says he is. Get him out of there before it's too late." Emily's grip on the phone tightened, torn between the friend she had trusted all her life and the stranger who claimed to know her danger. Emily lowered the phone, her hands shaking as she stared at Daniel. "She said not to trust you," Emily whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. "Course she did," he muttered bitterly. "That's how it works. It twists voices, it mimics the people you trust most." Emily's heart pounded, torn between his words and Sarah's warning. "No," she said, her voice cracking. "That was Sarah. I know her voice." Daniel rose slowly, towering over her, his tone grim. "Do you? That thing wants you alone. If you turn on me now, it gets exactly what it wants." Max barked furiously, tail stiff as if caught between both of them. The house groaned again, shadows crawling along the walls like ink spreading across paper. The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into bursts of shadow and dim glow. Emily staggered back, pressing against the wall, her chest heaving. The phone in her hand crackled before Sarah's voice screamed through the speaker. "Get out, he's lying!" Daniel snapped, his own voice booming. "That's not her." He reached for the phone, but Emily jerked away, clutching it tighter. The room seemed to tilt. The air charged like a storm about to break. Max howled, his bark swallowed by the rising hum of whispers vibrating through the walls. Emily's mind spun, caught between the two voices, unable to know which one to trust. She cried out, "Stop it, both of you!" Her voice shattered as the ceiling above groaned like something massive crawled across it. The phone slipped from Emily's grasp and clattered to the floor, the screen glowing with static. Out of the distortion, Sarah's voice whispered faintly, "Hell betray you, Emily." Daniel's face darkened, frustration mingled with fear. "You have to believe me," he urged, his voice harsh now. Emily backed away, her body trembling, her eyes darting between him and the phone. Max snarled, standing guard in front of her. The static grew louder, forming a garbled chant, each syllable pressing against her skull like needles. Emily screamed, covering her ears, while Daniel shouted over the noise, "It's feeding on this! It wants you to doubt!" The house groaned again, louder than before, the windows rattling as if the walls themselves would burst. The static on the phone softened into silence, replaced by a single recording file that appeared on the screen. Emily's trembling hand hovered over it before she pressed play. At first, she heard only her own sobbing voice from earlier, pleading for it all to stop. Then the whisper returned, deeper, clearer than before. It didn't just say her name, it said, "Emily, my daughter." Her body froze, her heart pounding so violently she thought it would burst. "No," she gasped, shaking her head. Daniel stepped forward, his face paling. "What did it say?" Emily dropped the phone, her voice breaking. "It said it's my father." The words hung heavy in the air, twisting the room into something suffocating and unreal. Emily stumbled back, pressing her hand over her mouth, her chest heaving. "He's dead," she whispered. "My father's been dead for years." Daniel's jaw clenched, his expression grim. "That thing. It doesn't just mimic voices. It binds itself to pain, to memories. It knows how to hurt you." Emily's eyes welled with tears, memories flashing of her father's cold absence, the scars he had left behind long before his death. The whisper slithered again, curling from the walls this time, repeating words she remembered from childhood. Words only he had ever said. Max barked violently, lunging at the dark hallway as though the voice had form. Emily collapsed onto the couch, sobbing, torn between grief and terror. Daniel knelt in front of her, his voice urgent but steady. "Listen to me. This isn't your father. It's using him. It knows his words, his voice, because it found them inside you. That's how it feeds, through the pieces of your past you can't escape." Emily shook her head violently, her fingers digging into her scalp. "But it sounded just like him," she cried. Daniel's eyes softened, though his voice stayed firm. "That's the point. It wants you to believe. If you do, it wins." The whisper rose again, cruelly repeating Daniel's words, twisting them until they sounded mocking, venomous. Emily screamed, covering her ears, but the voice seemed to seep through her skin, vibrating in her bones. The living room grew darker, the light bulbs dimming one by one until only the glow of the phone lit their faces. On the floor, the device played the whisper again, this time laughing, a hollow sound that scraped like rusted metal. Emily covered her mouth, choking back a scream. Daniel grabbed her shoulder. "You have to fight it," he urged, but his voice wavered for the first time. Max whimpered, ears pinned back. His body pressed close to Emily's leg. The laughter stopped suddenly, replaced by her father's voice again, gentle and commanding. "Emily, let him go. He's lying to you." Her eyes widened, snapping toward Daniel, suspicion flaring again despite herself. He shook his head fiercely. "Don't listen. That's not him." Emily's body trembled violently, her eyes darting between Daniel and the dark hallway. "It knows everything. she whispered, her voice breaking. The phone's glow flickered before shutting off, plunging them into near-total darkness. In that silence, the whisper returned, softer now, almost tender. "You can come with me, Emily. We'll be together again." Tears streaked her face as she sobbed, her breath hitching. Daniel stepped back, his eyes wide as though the voice reached even him. "Don't give in," he said desperately, his voice cracking with urgency. The house shuddered with a groan so loud it rattled the windows, and from the hallway came the sound of slow, dragging footsteps, each one impossibly heavy, moving closer. The footsteps in the hallway grew louder, each thud sinking into Emily's chest. She clutched the arm of the couch, tears streaking her face, while Max barked furiously at the advancing shadows. Daniel stepped in front of her, his voice strained. "Stay behind me." The air turned icy, her breath fogging in the dark. From the blackness of the hallway, a figure began to emerge. Tall, misshapen, its form shifting, as if stitched from shadow and bone. Emily gasped, her voice trembling. "It's him. It's my father." Daniel snapped. "No, it's not. Don't give it that power." The entity's head tilted unnaturally, its eyes glowing faintly as it whispered her name again, dragging it out with chilling patience. The entity stepped further into the room, its body twisting like smoke around fragments of human shape. Emily's chest heaved as her father's familiar voice poured out of its gaping mouth, cruel and commanding. "Emily, come here." She shook her head violently, sobbing. Daniel shouted, "Don't listen, it's feeding off you." The creature's gaze shifted toward him, and suddenly the walls shook, picture frames crashing to the floor. Max lunged at the entity, teeth snapping, but the dog was thrown back by an unseen force, yelping as he hit the wall. Emily screamed, crawling toward him, her fear nearly overwhelming her. The entity's laugh filled the house, a sound that scraped like glass inside her skull. Emily pulled Max close, her hands trembling as she whispered, "Stay with me." Daniel grabbed a broken chair leg from the floor, gripping it like a weapon, though his eyes betrayed his doubt. The entity's voice shifted, no longer her father's but Sarah's, warm and pleading. "Emily, trust me, he's dangerous, he'll kill you." Her stomach twisted, confusion ripping her apart. Daniel shouted, "It's lying. It'll sound like anyone you love." The entity stretched taller, its shadowy limbs dragging across the walls, scraping like claws. Emily covered her ears, tears pouring down her face. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice raw. The whisper only grew louder, chanting her name again and again, until the room shook violently. The lights shattered all at once, plunging the room into darkness, broken only by the glow of the entity's eyes. Emily clutched Max, her sobs muffled in his fur. Daniel swung the chair leg at the creature, but it passed through like smoke, the force knocking him off balance. The entity leaned close, its face hovering inches from Emily's. She froze, unable to move, as its breath, cold and foul, brushed against her skin. "You belong to me," it whispered, its tone both tender and terrifying. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, her mind spiraling between grief and terror. Daniel staggered back to his feet, his voice hoarse. "Emily, fight it, don't let it take you." His desperation cut through the suffocating dark. Emily's body shook violently, her heart hammering against her ribs. The entity's whispers wrapped around her, echoing with her father's voice, Sarah's, even her own. "You can't fight me. I am you." Her sobs turned into screams as she pressed her hands to her ears. Daniel lunged forward, grabbing her shoulders. "Don't let it in. It's nothing but lies." The floorboards cracked beneath them, the house trembling as if alive. Emily opened her eyes, meeting the creature's glowing stare. For the first time, anger cut through her fear. "You're not my father," she spat, her voice shaking but fierce. The entity recoiled, its shadow twisting violently, its laugh breaking into a guttural roar that shook the walls. The entity shrieked, its voice no longer her father's, no longer Sarah's, but a distorted chorus of all the voices it had stolen. Emily pressed her palms to the floor as the house shook violently. Daniel grabbed her arm, pulling her to her feet. "You're stronger than it. Don't let it control you, he shouted over the chaos. Max barked wildly, darting between them, his body tense. Emily's tears mixed with rage as she screamed, "You are not my father." The entity convulsed, its shadowy body cracking and splitting like glass. For a moment it faltered, stumbling backward into the darkness of the hallway. The whispers fell silent, leaving only the sound of Emily's ragged breathing filling the suffocating stillness. The silence that followed felt wrong, heavier than the storm that had just raged. Emily clutched her chest, gasping for air. Daniel scanned the room, his eyes narrow, sweat dripping down his brow. "It's not gone," he muttered. Emily shook her head, her voice trembling. "I can't do this anymore. I can't fight it." Daniel gripped her shoulders, his tone fierce. "You already did. You broke it. That means you can survive this." Max whined, pressing close to her leg, his ears still pinned back. Emily wanted to believe him, but the shadows seemed to pulse at the edges of her vision, like the house itself was breathing. She whispered, "Then why does it feel like it's still here?" Daniel turned toward the hallway, his jaw tight. "'Cause it doesn't die. It waits." His voice shook slightly, betraying his own fear. Emily followed his gaze, her stomach sinking as the floorboards creaked slowly, though no one moved. Max growled low, his hackles raised, staring into the dark. Emily whispered, "What does it want?" The answer came not from Daniel, but from the air itself, a soft whisper curling like smoke. "Forever." Emily staggered back, covering her mouth, her eyes wide. Daniel cursed under his breath, gripping the chair leg again, though it looked useless in his hands. The house groaned. The sound deep and hollow, as if the walls themselves laughed. Emily's tears streaked down her face as she whispered, "I can't live like this. I'll never be free." Daniel's eyes softened, his voice heavy. "You learn to live with it. That's all you can do." His words cut like knives, the weight of his own haunted past clear in his expression. Max whined, nudging Emily's hand with his nose, grounding her in the moment. The shadows pulsed again, and for a heartbeat, her father's face flickered within them, pale and distorted, his lips curling into a smile. Emily cried out, stumbling back. Daniel pulled her close, his voice urgent. "Don't look at it. Don't listen. That's how it wins." But her knees buckled as the smile lingered in her vision. The house fell deathly still, the air heavy with silence. Emily pulled away from Daniel, standing shakily on her own. Her face was pale but hardened, a fragile resolve breaking through the fear. "It's never going to leave me," she whispered. Daniel's expression darkened, but he gave a solemn nod. "No, but you can choose to live in spite of it." Max barked once, sharp and desperate, as though trying to break the tension. Emily looked toward the hallway, her breath shallow. Just before she turned away, the whisper came one last time, soft and deliberate. "See you soon." Her eyes widened, her stomach dropping as the lights flickered once, then died, plunging everything into darkness.